If there is one dish that defines Belgian comfort, it's our traditional Flemish stew. But when you want to elevate the occasion, to make it a touch more elegant and sophisticated, we turn to pork cheeks. I bought these pork cheeks from my local butcher and they still have the silver skin attached, which needs to be removed. To trim this is to lay the cheek silver skin side down, grip the edge firmly and use a smooth zigzag motion with your knife angled slightly downwards. The goal is to slice away the tough silver skin while wasting as little as this beautiful meat as possible. For everyone who has ever filleted a fish and removed the skin, this technique is remarkably similar. Of course, you can always ask your butcher to clean them for you beforehand. For the aromatic base of my sauce, I clean 3 onions, 1 carrot and a celery stalk. And chop them into rough, chunky pieces. I melt butter in a pan and sear the cheeks until they are beautifully golden brown. They do not need to be cooked through just yet. I'm simply developing a color for maximum flavor. I remove the meat from the pan add some more butter and saute the vegetables until they catch some color too. I keep an eye on the bottom of my pan to make sure nothing burns. Next, I dust the vegetables with a tablespoon of flour. I cook out the raw flour taste and the flour will act as a thickening agent for my sauce. I deglaze a pan with a Belgian blonde ale. Traditionally, a Flemish stew calls for dark, malt-forward beer, meaning it brings a sweet, toasty profile than the bitter, hop-forward notes of a blonde ale. A while ago I had pork cheeks cooked with the Belgian triple, but the chef had used far too much of it, making the dish almost too bitter. But I like the idea of having some bitter undertones in my dish, so I'm using a Belgian blonde ale today. You can also use a Belgian triple if you like, but steer clear of EPAs, they are far too aggressive. To ensure the sauce stays perfectly balanced and does not lean into that too bitter territory, I'm changing things up. Normally I would use beer as a solid cut, but I'm using less ale and topping it up with beef stock. I scrape up all those delicious caramelized bits from the bottom of the pan and transfer everything into a larger cooking pot. I don't actually have any liquid beef stock on hand. What I do have, however, are these frozen pucks of my homemade demi-glace, which is essentially a highly concentrated, deeply reduced beef stock. So I will just dilute it with a splash of water and it will be absolutely perfect. I season it with salt, black pepper, a few sprigs of fresh thyme and a bay leaf. And then let everything simmer gently on low heat for about 90 minutes. While the stew is working its magic, and if you're enjoying these classic Belgian recipes and want to see more of our culinary traditions, please consider hitting the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It truly helps the channel grow. Now, this is traditionally a very rustic, wintry dish, usually served with braised Belgian endives, Brussels sprouts or celeriac. But since it's currently June, let's keep things a bit more summery. I'm going to prepare carrots, courgette and peas. And I'm going to do the carrots 2 ways, pureed and grilled. For the puree, I'll peel 4 carrots and a small shallot. and cut them into pieces. I spread them in a knob of butter until the shallot turns translucent. Season with salt and pepper and add a tiny splash of water, letting them stew under a lid for about 20 minutes until they are completely tender. Then I blend everything until silky smooth and check the seasoning. Perfect. For the grilled element, I have these lovely cylinder carrots with a bit of the green tops still attached. I peel them thoroughly from top to bottom and scrape away any remaining grit with a paring knife. And trim the leafy tops short. It looks like they won't all fit in my pot. I will just trim this larger one down a bit. I blanch them in salted water for about 3 to 4 minutes, drain them and immediately chunk them in ice water to lock in that vibrant orange color. For the peas, I drop them into salted boiling water for about 5 minutes, drain and plunge them straight into ice water as well to keep them looking bright and fresh. I'm cutting the courgette in 2 distinct shapes, rounds and fries. I trim off the stem and slice the slender top part into neat rounds. For the fry shapes, I cut a section about 8 cm long, half it and slice it into thirds. And carefully cut away the watery white core. I toss the courgette and the blanched carrot into a bowl. Season with salt, pepper and coat them in a splash of olive oil. I get the griddle pan smoking hot and lay the vegetables down. Once I develop those beautiful short grill lines, I flip them over and lower the heat so they can finish cooking through gently. Meanwhile, I reheat the peas by tossing them briefly in a small saucepan with a tiny bit of butter. My pork cheeks have now been on the stove for an hour and a half. Since I'm using pork cheeks, I'm keeping it fancy. I'm going to quickly strain the sauce to achieve a beautiful, smooth, velvety finish. This is entirely optional. You could easily serve this a bit more rustic with the vegetables still in it. I adjust the seasoning with a touch more salt, but the flavor still feels a bit flat, even though there's plenty of salt in there. To fix this, I add a splash of red wine vinegar to make the whole dish bloom. This is much better. That delicate hint of acidity cutting through the slight bitterness of the blonde beer, wrapped in a rich sauce with the unctuous fat of the meat, is an absolute stroke of genius. I return the meat to the silky sauce. Time to plate. I spoon a few pork cheeks onto my plate. Ladle over a generous amount of that glossy sauce. Next, I arrange the grilled carrots, the courgette, the bright green peas, and an elegant spoonful of my carrot puree. To finish, I garnish the plate with a handful of fresh watercress. And there you have it, Flemish style pork cheeks, a sophisticated, balanced and deeply satisfying summer twist on a Belgian classic. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, enjoy!